Hello everybody and welcome back to more of our player guide series. My name is Zen and I'm going to be walking you through our second leadership guide. It's a continuation of the previous one where we talked about some principles of leadership and just, basic things within that. So now we're going to actually try to apply it to, being a guild leader, raid leader, and a group leader within Star Wars and really within any MMO in general. But this is going to be quite a long video, so let's start with the easiest one, which is group leading things like flashpoints, heroic 4+ quests, and even PvP stuff. In reality, a group leader really doesn't need to do a whole lot. In most cases, all you'll really need to do is, mark targets with the markers that you could do by just right-clicking on their portrait and adding a target marker, or you can even bind those in your key bindings. And other times, you may just need to explain fights and mechanics, and this, requires a basic knowledge of the flashpoint or the heroic mission that you're on, and if you're doing a PvP thing, then you'll just really need to guide people to where they need to be. The PvP leadership kind of crosses over into how a raid leader leads, so it's it's a little bit between the both, but for the majority of group leaders you won't really need to do a whole lot. And most of that is because group leading is very forgiving. You can get in and not really be a good leader, and this will be a good way to see how leadership is and getting your toes wet, proverbially. And the final two principles that we talked about in the previous guide, being honorable and being humble, are a good place to start with being a group leader. If you can kind of get those down, you'll get the hang of being a group leader fairly quickly. But let's move into talking about the second leadership role, which is one of the hardest to get a hang of, and that is being the role of a raid leader. There is a lot of pressure for being a good raid leader because you have so many things that you need to be doing, and the primary, aspect of this is learning how to multitask, and it can take quite a bit of time. I want to point out that I hear this one phrase just literally so much throughout an entire year that it frustrates the heck out of me, which is, I cannot multitask, or I am bad at multitasking, therefore I cannot do blank. And it's really frustrating because I teach drum lessons, on the side. It's one of the things I do. I'm a musician. I like to teach students how to play drums, and that was the primary thing I hear from them as well. I suck at multitasking, therefore I cannot play drums. Well, that's not true. Your brain is programmed to learn how to multitask, and anybody can do it. You just need to be taught how to. Most of this can be taught on your own, just learning to do, a couple things at once. Playing and talking. That's a pretty hard one to do, believe it or not. And most of the time, raid leaders will have to learn how to do that. It will take time, and it will take a lot of patience from you for yourself to learn how to do it. Now, while you are responsible for calling things out, you're not responsible for making a giant speech every time you do. It's actually pretty simple. You just need to be like, hey, DPS, kill this guy, or hey, this bad thing is about to happen, be prepared for it. And a good raid leader will call most things out. It's important too because it keeps the group focused. Your group should know ahead of time, like, hey, this bad thing will happen. I know it because I know the fight. I'm familiar with it, at least if you've done it a few times. So they should already be prepared to move out of it. But what you're just doing there while you're calling that out is so it keeps them focused. It acknowledges to them that, yes, this is about to happen. I am correct. Therefore, I am now ready to move out of this bad thing that will happen. You got to think of yourself almost as an orchestral conductor. What you're doing is you're help setting the pace and the tempo of the fight by assuring people are doing what they need to be doing and are ready to do things that may be coming up in the fight. And for example, there's quite a bit of things that are really dumb to call out, but it helps out a lot. The best one I have in mind is I call out when to pop defensive cooldowns. It's not like I want you to only pop it when I call it out, and my raiders know that, but it's more of a reminder. So say there's going to be a very, bad thing to hit the group, I call out, hey, pop your defensive cooldowns or use your med packs if you have them, because a lot of people will just forget that they have a med pack or forget that they have specific cooldowns, and they'll especially DPS will just try burning through things without trying to keep themselves alive. Healers and tanks are a little bit better at this, but DPS specifically will often forget that they have defensive cooldowns, and by calling it out, I'm just reminding them that, hey, if you're low on life, you should probably help yourself out here, and they do. And weirdly enough, while it seems like a really minute thing to call out, it does help out the entire raid significantly. With that being said, the raid leader also needs to know the fight better than anyone else in your group. I mean, while playing, you need to be able to see what's going on, you need to have an idea of what's going on in the fight at any given time, and you need to be able to call things out that are upcoming and things that may have just happened. That way you can help see if people are making mistakes or not. So if you can see everything that's going on, if you know what's going on, if you know what's coming up in the fight, you know what just happened, you can actually pretty easily see if someone just made a mistake, especially if you want them in a very specific spot and you can see them not in that spot. We'll talk about how to deal with that in a minute, but in general, you want to know the fight better than anyone else in your group. Generally, though, you will also be the one to describe the fight to new players in your group. You may want to send them to, a video or whatever, a guide to show them how to do the fight, but if they have any questions on how you do the fight, because a lot of raid groups do fights differently, then you need to be able to describe that to them. So once again, knowing the fight definitely really helps. So let's shift gears for a second here. If you're running a raid, typically you're running voice comms, right? You're running either Ventrilo, TeamSpeak, or Mumble. Personally, we run Ventrilo. It's just what we've always run. We've tried the others. We didn't really like them. But when you're running those, you have two temptations that'll happen. You'll have the first, which is everybody is super quiet, nobody's communicating at all, and therefore the vent or the Mumble or TeamSpeak server you're using is completely useless. We'll talk about how to get communication rolling here in a second, but the second one to this is exactly opposite, where nobody will shut up. Everybody is talking about something that happened in their day, and they're all just chatting. That's not good either, because that still isn't communicating what needs to be going on during a fight, and I've been in plenty of groups that have had this happen, where you're playing, there's tons of chatter, nobody's focused and paying attention, and therefore you wipe. It is a very common cause of wiping. Exactly the same with people not talking. You're in a group, it's completely silent, nobody's communicating, therefore you then wipe. It is imperative that you learn how to communicate properly. We'll show you a live example of a raid that we did this past week, just so you can kind of see how we run things. We're not the best, but we will show you how that works to give you an idea of how a raid should sound as far as communications go. It's important to note that there are some exceptions. Imagine you've had a fight on farm status for quite a long time and you don't really need to communicate on it. Then whatever, talk, don't talk during the fight. It doesn't matter as long as you really kill it, right? But the important thing to note is on the fights that are difficult that you do need to communicate on, you need to do two things. You need to not lose your cool and get over anxious, or not lose your cool and get super angry. And let's talk about that. So imagine a fight that you've been working on for a month now, and it's very difficult, and you haven't defeated it. It's going really well. You don't want to start going over anxious with the entire thing. You in that moment feel like, oh my gosh, we may actually do this. You get that anxiety feeling, you get super excited, and you start sounding super excited over comms. You don't want to do that because that gets everybody else super excited, and in that moment you will make mistakes. You want to stay calm, you just want to get the fight done, even though you know that it is really exciting, right? Keep calm in your voice, it'll help other people keep calm. Also, on that same fight that you've been having issues with, imagine someone does something stupid multiple times in a row, and you start getting kind of angry. You don't want to get angry within, the group. You don't want to just start spewing anger all over the place, because that doesn't help. It doesn't help at all. And in fact, it brings the morale of the group down, and therefore you will do worse and have a more hard time than you ever would. So there are correct ways to deal with issues when people are having problems, and there are good ways to do it, right? A good example of a wrong way is we used to have this raid leader back in the day when I used to raid without being the leader, that every time someone would die, something bad would happen, someone made a mistake, he would sigh. And it was very subtle, but he would just go, and he would do it over comms. And every single time our morale would just tank and we would never get the fight down for the rest of the night. You don't want to do that. You know, you don't want to verbally acknowledge like, hey, this is stupid, what are you doing? Especially if it's a very small mistake, because like I said, it brings that morale down and you're going to continue to die. But with that in mind, sometimes you do need to deal with that issue, and you do need to make sure people know that that is not okay, that they're continuously making a mistake, right? I usually give it quite a few wipes with the same mistake, but it really kind of is based on the situation there, so you just got to go with your gut on it. I can't give you, a solid example of what to do and what not to do here. Personally, though, when someone's making a mistake, I go, I talk to them personally first. I say, hey, what's going on? What can we do to help? And I just send them a quick message. And most of the time it'll be like, yeah, sorry, my brother or sister came in the room and they were distracting me and I couldn't focus. And you're like, okay, well, just get it dealt with and let's do this again. Pretty easy, right? You could take care of that behind closed doors. You don't have to do it in front of everybody else. Other times, the person's just not paying attention, and it does require a little bit of poking to get them to pay attention again. And once again, depending on the situation, you'll over voice comms with everybody else. You'll have to point them out. You don't want to embarrass them, but you do want to make sure that they know that they need to be paying attention in that situation, because if they aren't and you're wiping, they're literally wasting everybody's time, and that's not cool. The other side of this, though, is that encouragement will get you a very long way. If something that you're working on is very difficult, say you're working on like the first phase of a fight and you guys get through it, if you literally just for a second just say, hey, good job, everybody, let's move on, let's keep focused, that good job will inspire most people to continue to do even better than what they did before, and the fight will just snowball into this awesome, kill that you end up getting. Little snippets of encouragement will get you more mileage in a raid than anything else will. But with that stuff in mind, why don't we take an example of our raid that we did this past week. So this is going to be the hard mode version of the council fight in Dread Palace. Now, most people would say that this is a fairly hard fight, but it's really not, actually, and we're going to show you kind of the way we do it. Obviously, we won't do it the way that most people do. We have our own way of doing things, and we have our own way of communicating, but I just wanted to show you an example of a group that is communicating. Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Let us begin.
Slightly out of range that time. Go ahead and switch, Tristan.
Your time is over. Abandon your mind.
Taunt. Alright, range, you can switch to Tyrants when it comes out.
Alone.
That little punk.
Debuffs.
Was that your second knockback?
Yep, taunt, please. I leaped the wrong one, but taunted the right one.
What's Tyrant's at?
81. 81.
Okay. Taunt. Be aware, she's at 56, so just keep an eye on it.
Debuffs.
Tyrant is in the bubble, so watch yourselves range. Move away.
Yep, switch.
Alright, you're good.
Taunt.
Tyrant's at 59.
We're at 55, switch to Raptus.
Mine's at 60.
Okay.
Calface is at 58.
That's fine.
Debuffs.
Taunt.
55, switching to Raptors.
Okay, push Raptus.
How could you do this? This cannot be. This is unacceptable.
Good job. Stack up. Get heals.
Your pains have strengthened us.
You and I break off, Twisted.
We fight as one.
Pop all your DPS
I
goals.
hate mobs that move the second you start your channel ability.
Tell me about it with Flamethrower.
Rabbit just like, where the fuck she go?
We're slightly behind. Want to catch up. Push all your DPS you can.
I'm actually resorting to popping my power adrenal. Just to help out a little. I hate her.
Remember to stay away from where the marker is going to be. Alright, let's break away, Ganch.
No. There was more.
Oh, you were a little ahead, actually.
Well, yeah, it's because I pushed you guys.
You got her?
Yeah, go for it.
Just a friendly reminder, what are we bringing her to?
You can stop her at 25.
Debuffs. Debuffs.
Say that one more time.
25. Go ahead and break off. Everybody on Tyrants?
You can pull off now, Twisted.
I'm going now.
What's Calfeus at?
35.
Okay, that's fine. Just watch it. Be very careful.
And Twisted pull off at 36 just to give me a little extra room. Careful, Tyrant is in the bubble.
He's out.
I figured I'd let the rage know so they don't kill each other.
Tyrants is at
Debuffs.
20. Switching over to Raptor.
What's Tyrants at?
24.
Okay.
You want
Bring-
him lower?
Yeah, bring him down to 20. Ranged. You can stay on Raptus, Twisted.
Raptus under 20.
Alright. Everybody push and kill Raptus. You'll stay on him through this entire thing until he's dead.
Calpheus is still above 30, is that right?
Yeah, that's he's supposed to be.
Yeah, you don't want him to go below
There it
30
goes.
or he just mass
Kill
murders
Raptors.
us.
Pop cooldowns. Tyrant's next.
Lost.
And then Bestia.
Impossible.
And Calpheus.
Death. I feel it. What?
Good job, guys.
How?
So we're not the best at communicating, and we're not the best players in the world, but we have a positive attitude, and we get the bosses dead efficiently. This should give you a pretty good example of how a raid should generally be done, and also how communication should generally work. Now, we probably could do with less chatter and more communication, but that's, you know, that's like the first kill type thing. For us, we've done this boss countless times. We could probably do it without communicating at all. However, with that being said, it does help just to, you know, we don't want to be in there all night, so we just want to get the boss dead, so that's why we do what we do on that fight. And like I said, hopefully it gives you a good idea of how the communication side of things should work during a raid. You know, some leaders have their own style. I'm more straight and narrow, but I know leaders that are a lot more funny when they lead and they get super excited and stuff, and that's cool, whatever. You know, whatever's your style, and if it works, then awesome. But for us, this is how we do it, and, you know, if you replicate it, whatever, I would say do whatever works for your raid. Just the most important detail I want you to take out of that is the communication. You want to be communicating, and you want everything to be clear and concise if possible. But with all of that being said, hopefully you guys got something out of this guide for your either, you know, your raid leadership or your group leadership. There is one more final thing we need to talk about, and that is the guild leadership, but we will do that next week, and it will have, you know, more information containing how to be a better raid leader, group leader, and just a leader in general in there, including how to delegate workload, which is very important to being a leader. But if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below, and we shall see you guys next time.